I found my grandmother sitting in the rain with her entire life thrown on the lawn like garbage. Her hands were shaking, not from the cold, from fear. The woman who raised me, who never hurt a soul, was being treated like she was nothing. I pulled up in my old truck, still wearing my faded navy t-shirt, and saw two men in cheap suits laughing as they nailed a foreclosure notice to her front door. One of them kicked over a box of her photo albums. That's when something inside me went cold. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. I stepped out of the truck and walked toward them slowly. My grandmother looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Hunter," she whispered, like she didn't believe I was real. I hadn't told anyone I was coming home early. I wanted to surprise my wife, Morgan. I wanted to surprise my family. Instead, I came home to this. "What's going on here?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. The taller guy, the one who kicked the box, looked me up and down and smirked. "Foreclosure, buddy. Bank owns this place now. You got a problem? Take it up with management." I looked past him at my grandmother. She was 74 years old. She'd lived in this house for 50 years. Her late husband built it with his own hands. And now she was sitting in the mud, watching strangers destroy everything she loved. "Grandma, come on. Let's get you out of the rain." I helped her stand. She was so light. Too light. She hadn't been eating. I could tell. "I tried calling you, Hunter," she said quietly. "But they said you were deployed. I didn't want to bother you. You could never bother me." I wrapped my jacket around her shoulders and led her to the truck. The men didn't stop us. They didn't care. To them, she was just another name on a piece of paper. I drove her to a motel just outside of town. The whole time, she kept apologizing. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I didn't understand the paperwork. They said I had to sign something to lower my payments. But then everything got worse. I tried to call the bank, but no one would listen." I held her hand. "This isn't your fault." But inside, I was already calculating. I had money. A lot of it. More than anyone in this town could imagine. I'd made investments during my years in the SEALs, quiet moves that turned into millions. Then billions. No one knew. Not my wife. Not my family. I kept it hidden because I wanted to know who loved me for me, not for what I had. Now, I was glad I kept it secret. After I got my grandmother settled in the motel, I called Morgan. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. I sent a text. "I'm home early. Where are you?" No response. That was strange. Morgan always had her phone. Always. I pushed the thought aside and focused on what mattered. I needed to figure out what happened to my grandmother's house. The next morning, I drove to the bank. It was a small regional branch, the kind that pretended to care about the community but really just wanted to squeeze every dollar out of people. I walked inside and asked to speak to the manager. The receptionist looked me up and down. I was still in my old clothes, faded jeans, boots, a plain jacket. I looked like a guy who couldn't afford a cup of coffee, let alone a mortgage. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, barely looking up from her computer. "No, but I need to talk to someone about a foreclosure." She sighed and picked up the phone. A few minutes later, a man walked out of the back office. He was tall, well-dressed, with slicked back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm Dominic, the branch manager. How can I help you?" I stood up and extended my hand. He shook it, but his grip was weak. "Fake. My grandmother's house was foreclosed on yesterday. I want to know why." Dominic's smile widened. "Ah, yes. Eliza's property. Beautiful piece of land. Unfortunately, she defaulted on her loan. We gave her multiple chances to catch up, but she didn't. The bank had no choice. She told me she signed something to lower her payments. A loan modification, yes, but she still didn't keep up with the new terms." I stared at him. Something about the way he said it felt rehearsed, like he'd used that line 100 times before. "I want to see the paperwork." Dominic's smile faded slightly. "I'm afraid that's confidential. She's my grandmother. I have a right to see it." He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "Look, I get it. You're upset, but this is business. The house is gone. If you want to help her, maybe you can find her a nice little apartment somewhere. Something more affordable for a woman her age." I felt my jaw tighten. She doesn't want an apartment. She wants her home. Dominic shrugged. Well, that's not an option anymore. The bank owns it now. In fact, we're planning to develop the land. It's a prime location. Develop it. Yes. Luxury condos. High-end market. Should be quite profitable. That's when I realized this wasn't just business. This was personal. He wanted that land. He wanted it bad enough to push an old woman out of her home. How much would it take to buy the house back? I asked. Dominic laughed. Actually laughed. You? Buy it back? What do you do for a living, son? I'm in the military. Right. So, what? You make 40,000 a year. Maybe 50 if you're lucky. He leaned forward, his voice dripping with condescension. That house is worth at least 300,000. And with the development plans, probably closer to 500,000. You don't have that kind of money. I didn't respond. I just stared at him. He stood up and adjusted his tie. Look, I'm sorry about your grandmother. I really am. But this is how the world works. Some people win. Some people lose. She lost. I turned and walked out of the bank. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From rage. But as I got into my truck, something caught my eye. Dominic's car. A brand new Mercedes, parked in the manager's spot. Expensive. Too expensive for a small-town bank manager. I pulled out my phone and made a call. Not to my wife. Not to my family. To someone who could dig deeper. Yeah, it's me, I said when the line connected. I need you to run a full background check on someone. Name's Dominic. Works at First Regional Bank. I want everything. Financial records, property holdings, phone records. Everything. There was a pause on the other end. Then a voice I trusted more than anyone. How deep do you want me to go? I looked back at the bank. All the way. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the plastic chair outside my grandmother's motel room, watching the neon sign flicker in the rain. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. The confusion. The shame. She had spent 50 years building a life, and in one afternoon, it was stripped away by a man who wore a suit that cost more than her car. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. When morning came, I brought her breakfast, coffee, and a muffin, just how she liked it. But she barely touched it. She just stared out the window at the parking lot. I'm sorry, Hunter, she said again. Her voice was so small. Stop apologizing, Grandma. We're going to fix this. How? Dominic said the sale is final. He said there's nothing anyone can do. I didn't tell her about the billions sitting in my accounts. I didn't tell her that I could buy that bank 10 times over before lunch. Not yet. I needed to understand the enemy first. You don't engage a target until you know their weak points. And Dominic had plenty of weak points. I just had to find them. I'm going to go see him again, I said, standing up. Just rest. I'll handle everything. She looked at me with those sad, tired eyes. Be careful, Hunter. He's not a good man. I drove back to the bank, anger simmering in my chest. But this time, I had a plan. I parked my truck around the corner, out of sight. I didn't want Dominic to see me coming. I walked in through the side entrance, keeping my head down. The bank was busier today. People were lined up at the tellers, depositing checks, withdrawing cash. Ordinary people. People like my grandmother. I spotted Dominic in his office. The glass walls were transparent, meant to make him look approachable, but he was anything but. He was on the phone, laughing, leaning back in his expensive leather chair. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom. I waited until he hung up, then knocked on the door. He looked up, annoyed, but when he saw it was me, his expression changed. It wasn't fear. It was amusement. Back so soon? He asked, waving me in. Come to beg some more? I sat down across from him. I came to make an offer. An offer? He scoffed. We already talked about this. You don't have the money. Humor me. How much for the house? Dominic sighed, like I was wasting his precious time. The property is slated for auction next week. Starting bid is $150. But like I said, we have developers interested. It'll go for way more than that. $150. I raised an eyebrow. My grandmother owes $80 on the mortgage. Where does the rest of the money go? Fees. Penalties. Interest. It adds up quickly when you don't pay your bills. Show me the breakdown. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. You're persistent, aren't you? Look, soldier boy, I don't owe you anything. The bank followed procedure. Your grandmother signed the papers. End of story. I saw the papers, I lied. The signature looked shaky. For a split second, his confidence wavered. Just a flicker in his eyes. But he recovered quickly. Old people get shaky. It happens. She says she didn't sign a modification. She says she signed an extension. She's confused. Senile, probably. It's sad, really. I wanted to reach across the desk and wipe that smirk off his face. But I held back. So you're telling me everything was legal? Everything was above board. 100%. Then you won't mind if I have my lawyer look at it. Dominic laughed again. Your lawyer? Who's that? Some guy from the VA? Go ahead. Waste your money. We have a team of corporate attorneys who eat guys like you for breakfast. I stood up. We'll see. As I turned to leave, I noticed something on his desk. A picture frame. It was face down, like he'd knocked it over. I didn't think much of it until he quickly reached out and flipped it back up, turning it away from me. Nice chatting with you, he said, his tone dismissive. Now if you'll excuse me, I have real work to do. I walked out of the office, my mind racing. That flicker of hesitation when I mentioned the signature. The way he hid the picture. Dominic was hiding something. And it wasn't just about the house. I got back in my truck and checked my phone. Still nothing from Morgan. It had been 24 hours since I'd been home, and my wife hadn't returned a single call or text. That wasn't just strange. It was alarming. I decided to drive by our house. Maybe she was there. Maybe she lost her phone. Maybe there was a simple explanation. When I pulled into our driveway, my heart sank. Her car was there. The lights were on. She was home. I walked up the steps, my key heavy in my hand. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Morgan, I called out. No answer. I walked into the kitchen. There were dishes in the sink. A half-drunk glass of wine on the counter. And on the table, a brochure. I picked it up. It was for a luxury retirement community. Sunset Gardens, assisted living with dignity. My stomach turned. Why did she have this? We had never talked about moving anyone into a home. My grandmother was independent. She didn't need assisted living. Hunter. I turned around. Morgan was standing in the doorway of the bedroom, wearing a silk robe. She looked beautiful as always, but her eyes were guarded. You're here, she said, not moving toward me. No hug. No kiss. Just distance. I've been calling you for a day, Morgan. Where have you been? I was busy. My phone died. I didn't realize you were back. You didn't realize your husband was back from a deployment? She crossed her arms, defensive. I'm sorry, okay? It's been crazy at work. And with your grandmother's situation. You know about the foreclosure? She hesitated. Of course I know. Everyone in town knows. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to worry you while you were overseas. You have enough on your plate. I held up the brochure. And this? Were you planning to put her in a home without asking me? Morgan sighed, walking into the kitchen and pouring herself more wine. Hunter, be realistic. She can't live in that big old house anymore. It's falling apart. She's old. It's safer for her. That house is her life, Morgan. It's a money pit. And now it's gone. Dominic, the bank, they did what they had to do. I froze. Dominic. She blinked, realizing her slip. The manager. Everyone knows his name. He's been handling the case. You seem to know a lot about him. I just hear things. It's a small town. She took a sip of wine, her hand shaking slightly. Look, Hunter. It's done. The house is gone. We need to focus on our future. My career is taking off. We can't be dragged down by family drama. Family drama? I stepped closer to her. That woman raised me. She's not drama. She's family. Morgan rolled her eyes. You know what I mean. We have to be practical. That land is valuable. If the bank sells it, maybe it's for the best. I stared at my wife. The woman I loved. The woman I trusted. And for the first time, I saw a stranger. I'm going back to the motel, I said quietly. Grandma needs me. Hunter, wait, she called out as I walked toward the door. Don't be like this. Stay here. We can talk about it. There's nothing to talk about. I walked out into the night, the cold air hitting my face. But the chill inside me was worse. Morgan was lying. I knew it. She knew Dominic. She knew too much. And I was going to find out why. By the time I pulled back into the motel lot, the sun was gone and the sky had that deep blue color right before it turns black. The neon sign buzzed overhead, throwing pink light across the cracked pavement. I sat in the truck for a minute, hands on the wheel, just breathing. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was empty. Numb in that way you only feel when someone you trust starts to look like a stranger in your own head. I went up to my grandmother's room and knocked softly. It's me. She opened the door, already wearing the motel's oversized sweatshirt, her hair pulled back. She looked smaller than she had even that morning. Did you talk to him again? She asked. Yeah. And I forced a steady tone. He's not backing down. But I'm not done yet. She sighed and sat on the edge of the bed. Maybe it's a sign, Hunter. Maybe it's time I move on. That house is full of ghosts anyway. That house is full of memories, I said. You don't lose those because some guy in a tie says so. She gave me a tired smile. You've always been stubborn. Got it from you. We talked for a while about nothing. Neighbors, the weather, how bad the motel coffee was. I didn't tell her about Morgan. Not yet. I couldn't put that on her. Not while she was already carrying this. When she finally lay down and her breathing evened out, I stepped outside and leaned against the rail, looking out over the parking lot. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number with a secure link. Preliminary report on Dominic. More coming. You were right. He stinks. I opened the file. Shell companies. Side payments. Sudden jumps in personal assets that didn't match his salary. He'd bought 2 properties in the last 3 years, both in cash. No mortgage. One in the next town over, and one right here. A condo across from a hotel Morgan had mentioned more than once. My stomach twisted. I called my contact. This is just the surface? I asked. Oh yeah, he said. This guy's dirty. You want me to keep digging. Keep going. And flag anything that connects him to my town personally. People. Businesses. Phone numbers. You got it. I hung up and stared at the screen. I thought about Dominic's smirk. I thought about the way Morgan had said his name like it wasn't the first time. I couldn't shake the feeling that those 2 worlds weren't just brushing against each other. They were tied together. I drove back home. The house was still lit up, warm yellow spilling through the curtains. From the outside, it looked like any other nice, quiet suburban place. Inside, everything was wrong. I let myself in quietly this time. No calling out. No announcements. The TV in the living room played some reality show on low volume. An empty wine glass sat on the coffee table next to an open laptop. I walked over and glanced at the screen. An email draft sat open. Dominic, I checked the comps like you asked. The land is worth way more than they think. Once everything clears, we'll both come out ahead. I just need you to make sure there are no delays with the process. And my chest tightened. There it was. Not just casual conversation. Not just, I heard things at the salon. She was actively helping him. I took a slow breath and snapped a picture of the screen with my phone, then closed the laptop halfway so it looked untouched. Morgan, I called out, my voice steady. In here, she answered from the bedroom. I walked down the hall. She was sitting on the edge of the bed now, scrolling her phone, robe still on. When she saw me, she forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Hey, I thought you were staying with her tonight. I came back to grab some clothes, I said. And to talk. About what? She asked, like she didn't already know. About Dominic. About the house. About this retirement brochure you just happened to leave on the table. She sighed, annoyed. We already talked about this. Why are you making me the villain for something the bank did? Because you're acting like this is an opportunity, not a loss. It can be both. Hunter, she snapped. We live in the real world. Your grandmother can't keep up that place. You're gone half the year. Someone has to think practically. Practically, I repeated. And emailing the bank manager about coming out ahead. That's just practical too? Her face went pale for a split second before she recovered. You went through my computer? You left it open in the living room. She swallowed. I was just asking questions, trying to understand the process. If they're going to sell the land anyway, why shouldn't we at least know what it's worth? I meant your family, she said quickly. Us. Everyone. Don't twist my words. I studied her. The woman I married used to cry at dog adoption commercials. She used to make dinner for my grandmother just to hear her stories. Now she was talking about value and comps, like she was selling a stranger's house. How long have you known Dominic? I asked. She hesitated again. Barely. A few months. He handles some accounts for clients at my firm. Met him through work. Yes. I let the silence stretch. He knows details about my deployment. Things I never told him. She shifted on the bed. People talk, Hunter. Small town, remember? Not about classified locations they don't even know themselves. Her eyes flicked away. You're being paranoid. Maybe I was. But every mission I survived because when something felt wrong, I listened to it. I pushed off the doorframe. I'm going to grab some stuff and head back out. You're really choosing her over your own wife right now? She shot back, voice rising. Over our life, our plans. You're supposed to be part of our too, I said. Lately, I'm not sure who you're planning with. She stared at me, jaw clenched. If you walk out right now, don't expect everything to be waiting exactly how you left it when you decide to come back. There it was. Not a threat about loneliness. Not fear of losing me. A threat about things. Stability. Stuff. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and started throwing clothes in. As I turned, I caught sight of her phone on the nightstand, face down, charger plugged in. Morgan, I said quietly. You changing your passcode again? What? No. Why? She asked too quickly. Just curious, I said, filing her reaction away. When I left the room, I didn't go straight out the front door. I waited in the hallway. 10 seconds. 20. Then I heard it. The faint sound of her hurried footsteps, the rustle of fabric, her soft curse under her breath. I stepped back around the corner just as she snatched up her phone, tapping fast, screen lighting her face. I'd seen enough of people trying to cover their tracks to know that move for what it was. By the time she put the phone back down and returned to the bed, acting like nothing happened, I'd already made up my mind. I walked back in, keeping my tone casual. Forgot my charger. She didn't look up. It's on your side of the bed. While she stared at the TV, I grabbed the charger with one hand and, with the other, lifted her phone just enough to see the lock screen. Face ID. But she just unlocked it. I tilted it, thumbs swiping up fast, catching that small window before it locked again. It opened without a sound. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. I slipped the phone into my pocket with the charger, careful, smooth, the way I'd been trained to lift items off a table without making a sound. I'll be back tomorrow, I said, moving toward the door. She finally looked at me. Just don't do anything stupid, Hunter. I already did, I said quietly. I trusted the wrong people. Her brows pulled together, but I didn't give her a chance to respond. I walked out, shut the door, and headed straight for the truck. In the dark cab, with the doors locked and the engine off, I turned on her phone. The message thread at the top wasn't labeled with a name, just a number. I tapped it. The most recent text was from that afternoon. I told him it's for the best. He'll come around once the land is gone. After that, we can finally move on with real money, real life. Above it, another response. Good. Keep him calm. The last thing we need is a scene. Once the auction is done, I'll make sure your cut is waiting. And don't forget, you promised me more than just numbers, Morgan. The contact number ended with digits I already knew by heart from a file I'd just read. Dominic. I scrolled further up, and what I saw next didn't just confirm they were working together. It proved they'd been a lot closer than that for a long time. The messages went back 6 months. 6 months of Morgan telling Dominic things about me. When I'd be deployed, when I'd be home, what I knew, what I didn't. 6 months of her complaining about my grandmother's stubbornness and how the property was wasted on an old woman who couldn't appreciate its value. And then there were the other messages, the ones that made my hands shake. Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear that cologne I like. He'll never know. He's too busy playing hero. Once this is over, we can finally stop hiding. I sat in that truck for 20 minutes, staring at the screen, reading every word twice. My wife. The woman I'd protected. The woman I'd built a future with. She'd been planning my grandmother's destruction while sleeping in our bed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just went cold. I took screenshots of everything, backed them up to 3 different cloud accounts, then slipped the phone back into my pocket. Tomorrow morning, I'd put it back on her nightstand before she woke up. She'd never know I had it. But now I knew everything. I drove to a 24-hour diner on the edge of town and ordered coffee I didn't drink. I sat in a back booth with my laptop and started making calls. Not to lawyers. Not yet. To people who owed me favors. People who knew how to dig deeper than public records. By 3 a.m, I had a full picture. Dominic wasn't just corrupt. He was sloppy. He'd been skimming loan payments for years, hiding the money in offshore accounts under his brother's name. He'd foreclosed on 4 other properties in the last 2 years, all elderly homeowners, all prime real estate. He'd flipped the land to developers and pocket the difference. My grandmother wasn't his first victim. She was just his latest. And Morgan? She'd been feeding him insider information from her real estate firm. Property values, buyer interest, market trends. She wasn't just his lover. She was his partner. I leaned back in the booth, staring at the ceiling tiles. A part of me wanted to confront them both right then. Walk into that bank, drag Dominic out by his tie, and make him answer for what he'd done. But that's not how you win wars. You gather intelligence. You find the weak points. You wait for the perfect moment. And then you strike so hard they never see it coming. I pulled up my financial accounts on a secure browser. Offshore holdings. Investment portfolios. Real estate trusts. The numbers scrolled past, commas stacking up like dominoes. Most people didn't know I had money. I kept it quiet on purpose. I wanted to live a normal life. I wanted people to see me, not my bank account. But now I was done hiding. I opened a new tab and searched for the bank's parent company. First Regional was a subsidiary of a larger holding group that had been struggling for years. They were bleeding money, closing branches, trying to stay afloat. The parent company had put the entire regional division up for sale 3 months ago. No buyers yet. I smiled for the first time in 2 days. I made another call. This one to a private equity firm I'd worked with before. The kind that moved fast and asked questions later. I need you to put together an acquisition offer, I said. Full buyout. Cash. I want it done quietly. No press. No announcements. What's the target? First Regional Bank. The whole regional division. There was a pause. That's a big move. You sure? I'm sure. How fast can you move? If you're serious? 2 weeks. Maybe less. Do it in 1. I hung up and stared out the diner window at the empty parking lot. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Dominic thought he'd won. He thought he'd taken everything from my grandmother and gotten away with it. He had no idea what was coming. I finished my coffee, paid the bill, and drove back to the motel. My grandmother was already awake, sitting by the window with a cup of tea. You're up early, she said. Couldn't sleep. Me neither. She looked at me, her eyes searching. Hunter, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't let this destroy you. Don't let anger take over. Your grandfather used to say that revenge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I sat down beside her. I'm not looking for revenge, Grandma. I'm looking for justice. There's a difference? Yeah. Revenge is emotional. Justice is strategic. She smiled sadly. You sound like your grandfather. He taught me well. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun climb higher. I didn't tell her about Morgan. I didn't tell her about the messages or the plan. She didn't need that weight. But I made a silent promise to her right then. I was going to get her house back. I was going to make Dominic pay. And I was going to do it in a way that left no room for doubt, no room for appeals, no room for mercy. Later that morning, I drove back to my house. Morgan was in the shower. I slipped her phone back onto the nightstand exactly where it had been, screen down, charger plugged in. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, she didn't even glance at it. "You're back," she said, surprised. "Just grabbing a few more things." "Hunter, about last night. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to sound so cold. I worry about us. About our future." "I know," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Me too." She walked over and put her hand on my chest. "We're still good, right?" I looked down at her. The woman I'd loved. The woman who'd betrayed me. "Yeah, I lied. We're good." She smiled, relieved, and kissed me on the cheek before heading to the closet. I walked out of that house knowing I'd never sleep there again. By noon, I was back at the diner, my laptop open, phone ringing off the hook. My team was moving fast. Contracts were being drawn up. Funds were being transferred. The pieces were falling into place. Dominic had taken my grandmother's home, so I was going to take his entire world. 3 days later, Morgan cornered me in the kitchen while I was making breakfast. "There's a charity gala tonight," she said, leaning against the counter. "The hospital foundation. Everyone will be there. We should go." I kept my eyes on the eggs. "I'm not really in the mood for a party." "Hunter, please. People are asking about you. They want to see you. And it's for a good cause." She stepped closer, her voice softer now. "Besides, I need you there. With me." I looked at her. She was wearing that expression she always used when she wanted something. Hopeful, vulnerable, just the right amount of guilt. "Fine," I said. "What time?" 7. "Wear the navy suit. The one I got you last year." That night, I put on the suit, fixed my tie in the mirror, and tried not to think about the fact that I was walking into enemy territory. Morgan looked beautiful in a black dress that probably cost more than my truck. She smiled at me like nothing was wrong, like we were still the couple everyone thought we were. The gala was at the Grand Hotel downtown, the kind of place with valet parking and chandeliers that looked like they cost more than most people's houses. The ballroom was packed with people in expensive clothes, holding glasses of champagne, laughing too loud at jokes that weren't funny. I hated every second of it. Morgan grabbed my arm and pulled me toward a group of her friends. They greeted me with fake enthusiasm, asking about my deployment, thanking me for my service in that rehearsed way people do when they don't actually care. I smiled, nodded, played the part, and then I saw him. Dominic. He was standing near the bar, laughing with a group of men in suits. He looked like he owned the room. Confident. Untouchable. When his eyes landed on me, his smile widened. "Morgan," he called out, waving us over. "Come say hello." Morgan's grip on my arm tightened for just a second, but then she relaxed and pulled me toward him. "Dominic, you remember my husband, Hunter," she said smoothly. "Of course." Dominic extended his hand. I shook it, keeping my expression neutral. His grip was firmer this time, like he was trying to prove something. "Good to see you again," I said. "Likewise. How's your grandmother doing? I heard she found a place to stay." "She's managing." "Good, good. It's tough, losing a home like that. But sometimes change is for the best, you know." He took a sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving mine. "Morgan tells me you're thinking about moving on too. Fresh start and all that." I glanced at Morgan. She was smiling, but her jaw was tight. "We're considering our options," I said carefully. "Smart. No point clinging to the past." Dominic turned to the men beside him. "This is Hunter. Navy SEAL. Real hero type. But even heroes have to come back to reality eventually, right?" The men chuckled. One of them clapped me on the shoulder like we were old friends. "What do you do for a living, Hunter?" one of them asked. "I serve," I said simply. Right. But what's the pay like?" "I mean, you can't live off patriotism forever." Dominic laughed. "Probably 40, 50 grand a year. Maybe a little more with hazard pay." I didn't correct him. I just smiled and took a sip of water. "Must be hard," Dominic continued, "watching everyone else get ahead while you're stuck overseas." "I mean, Morgan's doing great. Her career is really taking off. But you? What's the plan after the military? Security guard? Consultant? Morgan laughed nervously. Dominic, stop. You're embarrassing him. I'm just being realistic, Dominic said, his tone dripping with condescension. No shame in it. Not everyone can afford the lifestyle, you know? Some people are just built for smaller things. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A text from my contact. Deal is ready. Waiting on your final approval. I looked up at Dominic, still smirking, still completely unaware of what was about to happen. You're right, I said quietly. Not everyone can afford this lifestyle. Exactly. Dominic raised his glass. To knowing your place. The men around him laughed and clinked glasses. Morgan looked uncomfortable, but didn't say anything. I excused myself and walked toward the bathroom, pulling out my phone as I went. I stepped into a quiet hallway and opened the secure app. Approve the deal, I typed. Move forward with acquisition. No delays. The response came back instantly. Confirmed. Papers will be filed Monday morning. You'll own the bank by end of business. I stared at the message for a moment, then slipped the phone back into my pocket. When I walked back into the ballroom, Morgan was standing alone near the balcony, looking out at the city lights. You okay? I asked. She turned, startled. Yeah, just needed some air. Dominic can be a lot. He's something, all right. She looked at me, searching my face. You're not mad, are you? About what he said. Why would I be mad? I don't know. He was kind of rude. He was honest, I said. He thinks I'm small. Insignificant. A guy who doesn't matter. Morgan bit her lip. You matter to me. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the lie in her eyes. She didn't mean it. She hadn't meant it in a long time. Good to know, I said. We stayed for another hour, making small talk, smiling for photos, pretending everything was fine. Dominic came by twice more, each time making another subtle jab at my expense. Each time, I smiled and let him think he'd won. By the time we got home, Morgan was exhausted. She kicked off her heels and collapsed on the couch. That was actually kind of fun, she said. Yeah, I said. It was. She looked at me, suspicious. You're being weird. Just tired. Well, don't stay up too late. We have brunch tomorrow with the Johnsons. I nodded and headed upstairs. I didn't tell her that by Monday, Dominic wouldn't have a job. I didn't tell her that by the end of the week, everything she'd been planning with him would be gone. I didn't tell her anything. I just went to bed, closed my eyes, and waited for the storm to hit. The letter about the auction came on a Thursday. Plain white envelope. Cold, official font. Notice of public sale. They'd scheduled my grandmother's house like it was a used car. I read it 3 times, standing in the motel parking lot while she napped inside. The date was set for the following Tuesday, 10 a.m., at the county courthouse. Dominic wasn't wasting time. By then, the acquisition paperwork for First Regional was already in motion. My team had moved faster than I thought possible. The parent company was desperate, and cash talks louder than anything. We had a signed purchase agreement. Now it was just timing. On Monday afternoon, I sat in a small conference room 2 cities over, across from a gray-haired attorney named Preston, my lead counsel on the deal. He wore a plain suit and wireframe glasses, the kind of guy you'd overlook in a crowded room. Exactly what I needed. The holding company has accepted your offer, Preston said, sliding a stack of documents toward me. Once you sign these, you'll be the majority owner of all First Regional branches in this state. How long until it's official? Effective upon filing. We've got a clerk waiting at the recorder's office. Realistically, by tomorrow morning, it's done. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 3:17 p.m. The auction was less than 24 hours away. Can Dominic stop the sale? I asked. Preston shook his head. He doesn't even know his employer has been sold yet. Branch managers are the last to be told. As of right now, he still thinks he works for the old board. I picked up the pen and signed my name on every line. Each stroke felt like a step closer to something I didn't have a word for. Not revenge. Not yet. Just alignment. The world tipping back toward fair. When we finished, Preston gathered the pages into a neat stack. "And the auction?" he asked. "I want you there," I said. "But not next to me." "Understood. You still want me bidding as a separate buyer?" "Yeah. Dominic needs to think he's fighting someone else. Let him sweat." Preston nodded once. He didn't ask why. That's why I liked him. That night, I told my grandmother about the auction. She was sitting on the motel bed, folding and refolding the same sweater in her lap, like if she did it enough times, she'd fold her way back home. "They're selling it on the courthouse steps," I said gently. "They do it fast. 10, 15 minutes. She stared at the carpet. "Are you going?" "Yeah." Can I go too?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to protect her from it. From seeing strangers throw numbers around like her life was just a line item. But she lifted her chin in that stubborn way I'd known since I was a kid. "I was there the day we poured the foundation," she said. "I'm not going to hide in a motel while they sell my home like a bargain bin." "Okay," I said softly. "Then we'll go together." Tuesday morning was bright and cold. The kind of cold that cut through your clothes and settled in your bones. We stood on the courthouse steps with a small crowd of investors, developers, and a few curious locals who had time to kill. Dominic was easy to spot. He stood near the front, wearing a navy overcoat and a smug smile, talking to a man I recognized from the gala. Same slick back hair, same expensive watch. A developer, from the look of him. "That's him," my grandmother whispered, her hand tightening on my arm. "That's the one who came to the house. He said he was sorry, but rules were rules." I looked at Dominic. He didn't see us. Good. A county official stepped up to a portable microphone and shuffled some papers. "Next on the docket," he called out. "We have the property at 814 Willow Creek Road. Single-family residence on 2.3 acres. Opening bid, $150,000. My grandmother flinched at the address. I put my arm around her shoulders. A man near the front raised his hand. 150. Dominic didn't move. He was waiting, measuring the room. He wanted to know who he was up against. Preston stood near the back, a plain black coat, hands in his pockets. He looked like any other quiet observer. I was off to the side with my grandmother, just another face in the crowd. "Do I hear 160? The official asked. Preston lifted 2 fingers. 160. The man in front glanced back, surprised. 170. 180, Preston said calmly. The developer beside Dominic leaned in and murmured something in his ear. Dominic's jaw tightened. He raised his hand. 200. A few people in the crowd whistled. That was a lot for a foreclosure in our town. My grandmother's breathing hitched. That's more than it's worth. Not to some people, I said quietly. Do I hear 210? The official called. 210, Preston said. The man in front dropped out. He shook his head, already done. Dominic's eyes narrowed, scanning the crowd, trying to identify his competition. Preston didn't look his way. He just watched the official, expression flat. 220, the official asked. Dominic lifted his hand again. 220. I watched the numbers climb, watched Dominic's posture shift from relaxed to irritated. 230, the official called. Next to me, my grandmother whispered, Hunter, this isn't right. No house is worth this much. To him, I murmured, it is. He needs that land. Remember that. 230, Preston said. Dominic cursed under his breath. I saw his lips move, the flush creeping up his neck. He wasn't bidding with calm calculation anymore. He was bidding with ego. 240, the official said. Dominic shot his hand up. 240. The crowd had gone quiet now. Even the people who didn't care about the house were interested in the show. Preston waited. Let the silence stretch. Going once at 240,000, the official began. 250, Preston said casually. A ripple went through the crowd. Dominic spun around, trying to spot who was pushing him. He locked eyes with Preston for half a second, but there was nothing to read there. Just a lawyer doing his job. Sir, the developer next to Dominic said under his breath, we have other options. We don't need this specific parcel. I need this one, Dominic snapped. He turned back to the official, his voice tight. 260. My grandmother shook her head, murmuring, "This is madness." I didn't disagree. The official looked back at Preston. "Do you counter?" Preston met my eyes across the steps. I gave the slightest shake of my head. He turned back to the official. "No further bids." "Very well," the official said. "Going once at 260. Going twice at 260. Sold, to the gentleman in the navy coat." The gavel hit the podium with a sharp crack. Applause broke out from a few people who just liked the drama. Dominic exhaled hard, like he'd just finished a workout. The developer beside him wasn't clapping. 260 for an old farmhouse, the man muttered. "You better hope your board doesn't see that line item." Dominic straightened his coat. "The return will be worth it." He still hadn't seen me. Not really. His gaze swept over my grandmother and me like we were background scenery. The crowd started to disperse. Dominic walked toward the courthouse doors to handle the paperwork, confidence back in his shoulders. My grandmother turned to me, confusion and hurt mixing on her face. "You got it. It's really gone, isn't it?" I looked at Dominic disappearing into the building. "No," I said quietly. "He just doesn't know it yet." Because somewhere, in a clerk's office across the state, my ownership paperwork for his entire bank was being stamped, signed, and entered into the system. By the time Dominic tried to finalize that purchase, he'd find out the ground under his feet wasn't his anymore. It was mine. My grandmother cried in the truck on the way back to the motel. Not loud, just soft, quiet sobs that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. She thought it was over. She thought she had lost the only place she had ever called home. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to say, "Grandma, it's okay. We won." But I couldn't. Not until the ink was dry. Not until I saw the look on Dominic's face when he realized he wasn't the king of the castle anymore. I dropped her off, promising I'd be back in a few hours with news. She nodded, too defeated to ask what kind of news. I drove straight to the bank. It was just past 1 in the afternoon. The lobby was quiet, the tellers moving slow, the air conditioner humming. I walked in, still wearing my jeans and boots, still looking like the broke veteran everyone thought I was. The receptionist, the same one who had brushed me off days ago, looked up. She sighed when she saw me. "Sir, Mr. Dominic is very busy today. Unless you have an appointment." "I don't need an appointment," I said calmly. "I'm afraid I can't let you back there then." "Call him." She blinked, surprised by my tone. "Excuse me." "Call him. Tell him Hunter is here. Tell him I have something he needs to see." She hesitated, then picked up the phone, eyeing me warily. She whispered something into the receiver, listened, then hung up. "He says he has 5 minutes." That's it. I walked past her, straight to the back office. The door was open. Dominic was sitting at his desk, looking pleased with himself. He had a stack of paperwork in front of him, the auction documents. "Well, look who it is," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Come to congratulate me?" I closed the door behind me and sat down without being asked. 260,000, I said. "That's a lot of money for a foreclosure." Dominic smirked. "Worth every penny. Prime location. Once those condos go up, the bank will make 10 times that." "The bank?" I asked. "Or you?" His smile faltered for a second. "Excuse me. I know about the development deal, Dominic. I know about your side arrangement with the construction firm. I know about the kickbacks." He laughed, but it was forced. "You've been watching too many movies, soldier boy. That's slander. I could sue you for that." "You could," I said, "but you'd lose." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I slid it across the desk. "What's this?" he asked, eyeing it suspiciously. "Read it." He hesitated, then picked up the envelope and opened it. He pulled out the documents inside. I watched his face. At first, it was confusion. His eyes scanned the header. Acquisition agreement. Transfer of ownership. First Regional Bank Holdings. Then, realization. His face went pale. He looked up at me, then back at the paper, then back at me. What is this?" he stammered. "It's a purchase agreement," I said. "For the bank. The whole regional division. All 12 branches. Including this one." "This is a joke," he said, laughing nervously. You? By the bank. You can't even afford a mortgage. I couldn't afford your mortgage, I corrected. But I could afford your boss's boss. I leaned forward. Check the date, Dominic. Check the signature. It was filed this morning. Confirmed at 9 a.m. He stared at the paper, his hands starting to shake. But, the auction. I just bought the house. You tried to buy the house, I said. But as the new owner of this institution, I have the authority to review and cancel any pending asset liquidations that haven't been finalized. And guess what? That auction isn't final until the deed is recorded. I pulled another paper from my pocket. A single sheet. This is an executive order, I said, placing it on top of the pile. Canceling the sale of 814 Willow Creek Road. Effective immediately. Dominic stared at the paper like it was a bomb. You can't do this. I just did. He stood up, his face flushing red. Who do you think you are? You can't just walk in here and sit down, I said. My voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was the voice of a man who had led teams into places Dominic would be too scared to look at on a map. He sat. I own this building, I said. I own this desk. I own that chair you're sitting in. And right now, I'm reviewing your employment file. Dominic swallowed hard. He looked like a trapped animal. Look, he said, his voice trembling. Okay, you got me. You have some money. I didn't know. But we can work this out. I'm a good manager. The branch is profitable. I can help you make this place even better. Profitable? I asked. Is that what you call skimming loan payments and illegal foreclosures? His eyes widened. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. And so do the auditors I have coming in tomorrow morning. He slumped back in his chair, defeated. The arrogance was gone. The power was gone. He was just a small man in a cheap suit who had messed with the wrong family. What do you want? He whispered. I want you to pack your things, I said. Right now. You're firing me? Oh no, I said, standing up. I'm not just firing you. I'm pressing charges. Fraud. Embezzlement. Predatory lending. My legal team is already talking to the district attorney. Dominic's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I walked to the door and opened it. The lobby was still quiet. Security. I called out. The security guard, a tired-looking older man named Frank, looked up from his post. Yes, sir. Please escort Mr. Dominic off the premises. He no longer works here. Frank looked at Dominic, then at me. He didn't ask questions. He'd seen enough of Dominic's cruelty over the years. He just nodded and walked toward the office. Dominic stood up slowly. He looked at me one last time, his eyes full of hate. You'll regret this, he spat. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, I said, I think I do. And honestly, I'm not impressed. As Frank let him out, the tellers stopped working. The customers stopped talking. Everyone watched as the man who had terrorized this town for years was walked out of his own bank in shame. I stood in the doorway of my new office and took a deep breath. It wasn't over. Not yet. I pulled out my phone and dialed my grandmother. Hunter, she answered on the first ring. Pack your bags, Grandma, I said. What? Why? Where are we going? Home, I said. We're going home. When I pulled back into the motel lot and told my grandmother we were going home, she just stared at me like she hadn't heard right. Home, she whispered. Hunter, don't say that unless you mean it. I mean it, I said. Get your things. We're done with this place. She moved slower than she used to, but there was a light in her eyes that hadn't been there in days. She folded her few clothes, picked up the worn photo album she'd saved from the lawn, and held it to her chest like it was made of glass. On the drive out, we didn't pass the bank. We went straight to the farmhouse. The foreclosure notice was still nailed to the door. The boxes on the lawn were damp, but most of her furniture was still inside. It looked like a crime scene somebody had just walked away from. I took the notice off the door and crumpled it in my hand. Can we really just go in? She asked quietly. We own this house, I said. We never stopped. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Dust. Old wood. Something like lemon cleaner from the last time she tried to make it nice before I came home. She stepped over the threshold like she was afraid the floor might disappear. In the kitchen, she ran her fingers along the counter, the cabinets, the back of a chair. "I thought I'd never see this again," she said, voice shaking. "You're not losing it," I said. "Not to people like him." We unpacked what little she had from the motel. I got the utilities on the phone and had service restored. Money makes things move fast. Doors that were closed suddenly opened the second my new title at the bank came up. By late afternoon, the heat was back on. The lights were working, and my grandmother was sitting in her favorite chair by the window, a blanket over her knees. "Where are you going now?" she asked. "I've got a staff meeting," I said. "New owner has to say hello." She smiled faintly. "Don't be too hard on them. Not everybody in that place is bad." "I know," I said. "But the one who is? He's about to have a very bad day." When I walked back into the bank, something had already changed. The receptionist sat up straighter. The tellers stopped what they were doing and watched me cross the lobby. Word travels faster than any memo. They all knew Dominic had been escorted out. They just didn't know why. I stepped into what had been his office a few hours earlier. Now it was mine. The first thing I did was turn that family photo on his desk face up. A woman and two kids who had no idea what kind of man their father really was. I felt a flicker of pity, then set it aside. There was work to do. At 4 o'clock sharp, I had every employee, from the janitor to the assistant managers, gather in the lobby. They stood in a loose semicircle, whispering, eyes darting between me and the closed doors. Preston stood off to the side, a tablet in his hand. Next to him was another man in a gray suit with a county badge clipped to his pocket, a representative from the district attorney's office. Quiet. Watching. "Thanks for coming out on short notice," I said, stepping forward. "Most of you know me as the guy who came in here last week asking questions about a foreclosure." A few people nodded. One teller looked down, ashamed. "What you may not know," I continued, "is that as of this morning, I'm also the majority owner of this branch and 11 others like it." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some glanced at each other, surprised. Others relieved. "I'm not here to scare you," I said. "I'm not here to clean house, just to make a point. I've read some of your files. I know most of you are just trying to do your jobs, but I am here to make something very clear." I turned toward the big screen mounted on the back wall, the one they usually used for training videos and company updates. Preston tapped his tablet. The screen flickered, then lit up with grainy black and white footage. The bank lobby. A timestamp in the corner. A familiar figure at the customer service desk. My grandmother. She stood there, clutching her purse, talking to Dominic. He didn't offer her a seat. He didn't look at the paperwork with her. He just handed her a pen and pointed to a line. "There's no audio on this one," I said. "But we pulled the transaction records that go with it. This was supposed to be a loan modification. Lower payments. More time." What she actually signed was a document accelerating her default. I clicked a small remote in my hand. The footage changed. Another angle. Another day. This time, we had audio. A man in his late 60s sat across from Dominic, hands shaking. "I told you I mailed the check," the man said. "It must have gotten lost. I'll bring another one tomorrow, I swear." Dominic leaned back, bored. "That's not how this works, Mr. Ryder. You're already 2 months behind. We gave you a chance. You didn't take it. I never got half those letters you said you sent," the man protested. Dominic shrugged. "Then that's on you. Maybe next time you'll pay closer attention." The footage cut to another clip. Another elderly homeowner. Another cold conversation. Another, "Nothing we can do." The room was silent. "Over the last 2 years," I said, "this branch has processed an unusually high number of foreclosures against older homeowners on valuable land. In almost every case, paperwork was rushed. Notices weren't sent properly. Terms were changed without clear explanation." I nodded to Preston. He pulled up a chart. Dates, names, loan numbers. 14 families. 14 houses. And in almost every case, I continued, a shell company linked to Dominic bought the property at auction, then flipped it to developers for a profit. Money that never touched this bank's official books. Someone in the back whispered. I knew it. I kept going. Some of you raised concerns, I said. I've read the emails. Are we sure this is compliant? Should legal review this? In every case, your questions were shut down. You were told this came from upper management. It didn't. I looked around the room, making eye contact with as many as I could. It came from one man who thought nobody would ever look over his shoulder. The DA's rep stepped forward just enough for people to notice him. We've turned over everything we've found to the authorities, I said. There will be an investigation. Some of you may be asked to testify. If you cooperated with Dominic because you were afraid of losing your job, that will come out. If you helped him because you wanted a piece, that will come out too. Preston tapped again. The screen changed one more time. This clip wasn't about loans. It was the lobby footage from a different angle. The camera above the entrance. The timestamp spanned months. Same two people. Over and over. Dominic. And Morgan. She walked in wearing sunglasses and work dresses, sometimes at lunch, sometimes near closing. Sometimes they stood too close at his desk. Once, they disappeared into his office and didn't come out for 40 minutes. I didn't say her name. I didn't have to. Someone near the front whispered, "Isn't that?" and stopped. I felt every eye on me, waiting to see if I'd explode. Waiting to see if this was about jealousy after all. It wasn't. You're not seeing this because of my marriage, I said, my voice steady. You're seeing it because it shows a pattern. Dominic didn't just use his position to prey on customers. He used it to build relationships that helped him manipulate the system from the outside. I let that sit for a moment, then clicked the screen off. Here's how this is going to work, I said. From today forward, no loan goes into foreclosure without a full, documented review by an external compliance team. No signatures without independent confirmation the person understands what they're signing. No more tricks. No more fine print games. A few heads nodded. Someone actually clapped once before catching themselves. If you can't do your job without lying to people, you won't have a job here, I finished. If you've been waiting for someone to give you permission to do the right thing, this is it. I stepped back. No applause. No cheering. Just a heavy, electric silence. Then the receptionist, the same woman who tried to block me from seeing Dominic, raised her hand. Sir, she said, what about the people who already lost their homes? I met her eyes. We're going to talk about every single one of them, I said, starting with a house on Willow Creek Road. And as I said it, I knew there was one more conversation I couldn't avoid much longer. The one waiting for me under my own roof, with the woman who had walked into this bank over and over again, smiling at the man who tried to erase my grandmother's life. The drive from the bank to my house felt longer than it should have. The sun was setting, painting the sky in fiery streaks of orange and purple. It was beautiful, but I felt nothing, just a hollow quiet inside me. The public part was over. Now for the personal. Her car was in the driveway. The lights were on inside. She was home, waiting. I walked in without knocking. I still had a key after all. She was pacing in the living room, phone pressed to her ear. When she saw me, her face was a storm of panic and anger. He's not answering. She snapped at me, hanging up the call. No one at the bank is answering. What did you do, Hunter? She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask about my grandmother. She only cared about one thing. I told them the truth, I said, my voice flat. The truth. She laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. You ruined him. You walked in there and destroyed his career, his life. For what? A stupid old house. He tried to steal from my grandmother, I said. He preyed on old people. That's not business, Morgan. That's evil. It's how the world works, she shot back. You wouldn't understand. You're too busy playing soldier to see how real people get things done. He had a plan. We had a plan. We. I repeated. There's no we anymore. She stopped pacing and stared at me, her eyes narrowing. What is that supposed to mean? Don't you dare turn this on me. I was trying to handle this. I was trying to make sure we all came out of this okay. By helping him forge documents. By feeding him information about when I was deployed so he knew when to make his move. Her face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Stop lying, Morgan. It's over. I took a folded set of papers from my jacket pocket and placed them on the coffee table between us. Divorce papers. She looked at the documents, then back at me, her mouth opening and closing. For the first time since I'd walked in, she looked truly scared. You're divorcing me? She whispered. After everything? Because of some misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding. I read the texts, Morgan. All of them. The ones about the money. The ones about your future together. The ones where you made jokes about me being overseas while you were in his bed. All the color drained from her face. She sank onto the couch, speechless. The fight was gone, replaced by a desperate, calculating look in her eyes. Hunter, listen to me, she started, her voice changing, becoming soft and pleading. It wasn't like that. He was manipulating me. He promised me things, he scared me. I was trapped. I didn't say anything. I just watched her, letting the silence stretch. I'd seen better acting in high school plays. You have to believe me, she said, tears welling up in her eyes. I love you. I only ever loved you. I made a mistake. A stupid, terrible mistake. But we can fix this. Please, don't throw our life away. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. It's a nice speech, I said. But you're about 6 months too late. So that's it? She asked, her voice hardening again when she realized the tears weren't working. You're just going to walk away? What about this house? What about everything we've built? This house is mine, I said. It was bought with funds I had before we were married. Just like the car you're driving and the accounts you have access to. Her eyes widened. What are you talking about? I pulled out one more piece of paper. The one she'd signed without reading too closely because she was so excited about the wedding. Our prenuptial agreement. You probably don't remember this, I said. But my lawyers insisted on it. Standard procedure for someone with assets. I pointed to a specific clause. Section 4B. The infidelity clause. It states that in the event of proven marital infidelity, all claims to shared assets are forfeited. You leave with what you came with. She snatched the paper, her eyes flying across the page. No, this can't be real. You didn't have any assets. I didn't have assets you knew about. I corrected. I wanted to be sure you were marrying me, not my money. I guess I got my answer. She looked up at me, pure hatred in her eyes. You tricked me. No, I said. I trusted you. And you failed the test. She stood up, shaking with rage. You can't do this. I won't let you. I'll get a lawyer. I'll take you for everything you have. Go ahead, I said. My lawyers are better than yours. And they have a file of your text messages with Dominic. They have the bank's security footage. They have sworn testimony from 3 people you introduced him to for his little schemes. You won't get a dime. The reality of her situation finally crashed down on her. The money was gone. The plan was gone. Dominic was gone. And now I was gone. She was left with nothing. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get your things. And get out of my house. You can't just kick me out, she screamed. I have nowhere to go. That's not my problem anymore, I said, my voice as cold as ice. You can go back to your parents. You can stay with a friend. I don't care. But you're not spending another night under this roof. She stared at me, her face a mask of disbelief and fury. Then, she let out a strangled sob and ran upstairs. I stood in the living room, listening to the sounds of her throwing things into a suitcase. The sound of drawers slamming. The sound of a life we built together being ripped apart in a matter of minutes. When she came back down, dragging a single suitcase behind her, she didn't look at me. Her face was red and splotchy, her makeup smeared. She stopped at the door and turned. I hope you're happy, Hunter, she whispered, her voice full of venom. I hope you and that old woman are happy in that falling down house. You deserve each other. Then she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, and the house fell silent. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where she had been. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel relieved. I just felt empty. The war was over. I had won. But it turned out winning could feel a lot like losing everything. The weeks that followed were quiet. Too quiet. I spent my days at the bank, undoing the damage Dominic had done. My team and I reviewed every one of the foreclosures he'd pushed through. We found 4 other families who had been tricked, just like my grandmother. We started the process of getting their properties back, either through legal action or by buying them back outright. My grandmother settled back into her house, the color returning to her cheeks. She started baking again. The smell of apple pie filled the old rooms, chasing away the scent of fear and decay. She never asked about Morgan. She just knew I was hurting, and she'd leave a cup of tea on the porch for me every evening when I came home from work. It felt like peace, but I knew it was just the calm before the next storm. It came in the form of a certified letter delivered to the bank. Dominic was suing me. He was claiming coercion, illegal termination, and corporate espionage. He alleged that I had illegally acquired the bank just to ruin him, and he was demanding millions in damages. It was a desperate, foolish move, a last-ditch effort from a man with nothing left to lose. I took the letter to Preston. He read it, then looked at me over his glasses, completely unfazed. "This is good news," he said. "How is this good news?" I asked. "Because he just opened the door for us," Preston explained. "By filing this suit, he's legally obligated to participate in the discovery process. That means we get access to every financial record, every email, every asset he has. He can't hide anything now. He thinks he's cornering us, but he just walked himself into a cage." Over the next month, Preston's team went to work. They filed subpoenas. They deposed witnesses. They dug into every corner of Dominic's life. And they found something. It was a small rental fee, paid every year in cash to a rival bank across town. A safe deposit box, one that Dominic had forgotten to list on his asset declaration. Preston got a court order. 2 days later, I was standing with him in a cold, sterile vault, watching a bank employee use 2 keys to open a small metal box. The employee slid the box out and placed it on a table. "What do you think is in there?" I asked Preston. "Cash? Incriminating documents." "We're about to find out," he said. He lifted the lid. The box was almost empty. No stacks of money. No secret ledgers. Just a single, dusty, rolled-up tube of paper tied with a faded red ribbon. Preston carefully lifted it out and untied the ribbon. He unrolled it on the table. It was a set of old blueprints. The paper was yellowed and brittle at the edges. I recognized the layout immediately. The porch, the kitchen, the strange little closet under the stairs. It was my grandmother's house. Why would he have this? I murmured, tracing the lines with my finger. Then I saw it. In the margins, written in faint pencil, were notes. Arrows pointed to specific places inside the walls of the master bedroom and the fireplace hearth. Next to the arrows were handwritten words. Check depth. Reinforced. Cavity behind brick. And next to one specific spot behind the main fireplace, circled 3 times, were 2 words that made my blood run cold. Bearer bonds. I stared at the words, and suddenly, everything clicked into place. The obsession with the house. The willingness to overbid at the auction. The way he talked about the land's value, with a hungry look in his eyes. He wasn't just after the land for development. He knew something was hidden inside the house itself. My grandfather, I said aloud, my voice barely a whisper. He was a quiet man. Came from old money, but never spent it. He always said he was saving it for a rainy day. My grandmother thought he'd lost it all in the crash of '29. Preston looked at the blueprints, then at me. Looks like he didn't lose it. He hid it. Bearer bonds. Untraceable. As good as cash to whoever holds them. If they were from the 1920s, they could be worth a fortune. But how did Dominic know? I asked. We don't know yet, Preston said. Maybe he found an old diary at an estate sale. Maybe he overheard a story. It doesn't matter. What matters is that this was never just a real estate scam. This was a treasure hunt. He needed to own the house so he could tear the walls down without anyone asking questions. The cruelty of it hit me like a punch to the gut. He wasn't just trying to evict an old woman. He was trying to steal her family's legacy, a secret her own husband had kept to protect her. He was going to let her believe she was broke while he ripped a fortune out of her walls. I thought about my grandmother, sitting in her favorite chair, believing all she had left were memories. Preston rolled the blueprints back up carefully. Dominic's lawsuit is over, he said quietly. This proves intent to commit a felony. Attempted grand larceny, on top of everything else. He's not going to get a dime. He's going to prison for a very long time. I took the blueprints from him. The paper felt heavy in my hands, heavy with the weight of a secret kept for almost 100 years. This wasn't about the bank anymore. It wasn't about Morgan or the money. It was about my grandfather. It was about a promise he made to my grandmother without her ever knowing it. A promise to keep her safe, even after he was gone. And now, it was my job to finish what he started. I walked out of that vault with a new kind of resolve. Dominic hadn't just tried to steal a house. He had tried to steal our history. And I was going to make sure he never hurt anyone ever again. I didn't tell my grandmother about the blueprints right away. I wanted to be sure. Preston arranged for a specialized team to come to the house. Not construction workers, but restoration experts who knew how to handle delicate structures. I told my grandmother we were just doing some routine inspections to check for termite damage. She trusted me, so she baked cookies for the crew and sat on the porch while they worked. They started with the fireplace. I watched as they carefully removed the brick facade, layer by layer. My heart pounded in my chest with every strike of the chisel. What if Dominic was wrong? What if the notes were just wishful thinking? But then, behind the fourth layer of brick, they hit metal. A small, steel door, set deep into the masonry. It was rusted shut, welded by time. The foreman looked at me, and I nodded. They used a small cutting torch to slice through the hinges. When the door fell open, a puff of stale air, trapped since the 1920s, drifted out. Inside was a metal box, much larger than the one in the bank vault. I reached in and pulled it out. It was heavy, solid. We took it to the kitchen table. My grandmother came in from the porch, wiping flour from her hands. "Hunter, what is that?" she asked, her eyes wide. "Grandpa left something for you," I said softly. I used a screwdriver to pry the lid open. It gave way with a sharp crack. Inside, stacked neatly in rows, were bundles of paper. Not cash. Bonds. Beautiful, intricate bearer bonds from companies that had built America, railroads, steel, oil. And underneath them, gold coins. Real gold. My grandmother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. He always told me not to worry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He said, Eliza, no matter what happens, the house will take care of you." I thought he meant the shelter. I didn't know. "He meant this," I said. "He saved everything he had. He hid it right here, where no one could take it from you." We had the bonds appraised. The total value, with interest and the rarity of the coins, was over $4 million. Dominic had known. He'd tried to steal a fortune from a widow who was clipping coupons to buy groceries. But he would never enjoy a dime of it. The trial was short. With the blueprints, the hidden vault, and the overwhelming evidence of fraud, Dominic's defense crumbled. He took a plea deal to avoid a maximum sentence, but he still got 15 years in federal prison. I went to his sentencing. I wanted to see him one last time. He looked smaller in the orange jumpsuit. Older. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow, defeated stare. When he saw me in the gallery, he quickly looked away. He knew he had lost to the one person he had dismissed as worthless. Morgan didn't show up. I heard she moved 2 states away, living in a small apartment, working as a receptionist at a dental office. She sent me one letter, asking for closure. I burned it without opening it. I didn't need closure. I had peace. I spent the next year renovating the farmhouse properly, not tearing it down for condos, but restoring it. New roof, new windows, a modern kitchen for my grandmother. We used the money from the bonds, Grandpa's money, to do it. It felt right. The bank flourished under the new management. We launched a program specifically to help elderly homeowners refinance safely. We hired honest people. We became a pillar of the community again, instead of a predator. One evening, about a year later, I sat on the porch with my grandmother. The sun was setting over the fields, casting long golden shadows across the land that was ours, free and clear, forever. She reached over and patted my hand. "You saved us, Hunter," she said. "You could have walked away. You could have let it go. But you fought." "I didn't do it alone," I said, looking at the sturdy walls of the house. "Grandpa helped." She smiled, looking out at the horizon. "I like to think he's watching. I think he'd be proud of the man you became." I looked at her, the woman who had given me everything, and for the first time in a long time, the soldier in me finally rested. The war was over. The enemy was defeated, and the people I loved were safe. I took a sip of my tea and watched the first stars appear in the sky. "Yeah," I said softly. "I think he would be." "Wait, before you go, I have a serious question for you. If you found out someone you trusted more than anyone in the world, your partner, your best friend, was secretly plotting with your worst enemy to destroy your family, would you forgive them if they begged for a second chance? Or is betrayal the one thing that can never be fixed? Be honest. I really want to know what you would do. Also, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see our community growing from all corners of the globe. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please gently tap that like button and subscribe. We're building something special here, and I'd love for you to be part of it. One last thing, I want to write stories that you want to hear. So, tell me in the comments, what kind of story should I do next? Do you want more military revenge? A twisty psychological thriller? Or maybe a mystery where the hero is someone you'd never expect? Let me know what gets your heart racing, and I'll bring it to life in the next video. Until then, stay safe, watch your back, and keep fighting the good fight. See you in the next epic story.